Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed Vav. We're going to begin on the very bottom of Lamed Hamid Bey's last line. So we were learning in the Mishnah that there are certain things which are belonging to an idol worshiper, an Oivdei Kochavim, in which because of that they're usher, but the isser is not as strong as some of the other things we mentioned. They're not usher b'hanah. So we were discussing milk, and now we're going to continue with other items, including oil. Hashemin shalahen. So shemen, with regard to oil, Rav Omer that Daniel Gozerolov, that the reason why a person is not allowed to even have the oil is because Daniel, in his days, made a gezer against it. We're going to see because of chasnus, that if we allow, similar to pas, that when a person is eating meals or sharing oil, so there's a chance because of this close relationship that you may end up potentially getting too close to that family and marrying the man's daughter. Shmuel Omer, as we continue to Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, he says it's for a different reason. It's because of zilifosin shel kelim tamein oisartan. It's because of the taste that absorbed in the kelim of them. That's what asters the oil. So atu what? Koli alma oichli taharos dinhu. What the whole world is eating oichli taharos. El zilifosin shel kelim asurin osartan. It's not that the kelim are tameh, because everyone has to make sure that they're tahar all the time. Maybe a person doesn't care about tumat tahara, or maybe you're tameh right now. So what's the difference? No, the issue again is kelim asurin. Armulei Shmuel Rav Bishul Medinamina Zali Fosan Shel Kelim Asurin or Sartan. The reason why I said it's an issue is because of these kelim. So I knew the Chiyasa Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Masa, when he came, but Yomer Va'omer, he said Darsh Rabbi Simloi ben Etzivin, that he made the following drasha, that shemen, regarding oil, Rabbi Huda Beis Dinu Nimno Alav Hitiruhu. They said, you know what? It's okay. Oil is allowed. Why? Because the whole issue is because only a practical reason is that the oil will end up getting this non-kosher stuff inside of it, and therefore, because of tam ki'ikr, is an issue. However, if it's the kli is, let's say, not a ben yoima anymore, so therefore, because it'll be noitz and tam hubagam, and therefore there'll be no longer an issue of using their oil. El didach niyamad Daniel Gazer of Daniel Gazer. So understand, Daniel is Gazer because of chasnus. So how could it be? B'yasser Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Mavatile. How could Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi come later on and be mavatal? It's the reason is still potentially valid reason. And even more important, as we've seen in numerous places, as well as Masechtas Megillah, the Tanan, Ein Beis Yochel Dibri Beis Chaver Elim Ken Gadol Himad B'Chachva B'Minyan. The only time the later Beisin can come is only if they're greater in knowledge and number, which basically is almost saying that can't happen, or it's almost an impractical situation compared to our previous generations. So the question is, how could he have removed the gezerah? My reason makes sense. It's not really a gezerah as much as it's a legitimate concern of kashrus. But if we're dealing with a kli in which is nois and tam hamigam, so therefore there's no reason to be concerned about it anymore. But according to this, doesn't make any sense. Simloi luda ka'amrit, says Rashi, mizalzle b'midid rabbanon. You're referring to those who are mizalzel, that of the rabbanon. Shani ludoi the mizalzelu. So in other words, these people are not particular, and they're mizalzel the words of the chachamim. So armalei eshachle. So should I send this message to him? So ichsip, he was embarrassed. Amarav imhim lo darshu, if they don't darshan, and none lo darshinan b'ksiv v'yosem Daniel al liboy. It says that he put upon his heart asher lo yisgoyel b'pas bag hamelach v'yayin mishta. So it says his parties, which says lashon rabim. So we say it's actually b'shtei mishtais akasam adaber. There's actually two mishtais that the pasuk is talking about. Echad mishta yayin, echad mishta shemen. Apparently, you can have a mishnah which constitutes wine, and another one with oil. And therefore, because of that, this is what he darshaned, that actually it was an issue, not just because, as we said, maybe because of Kala and Misurim, but because Mamish, there's an issue of Mishta. Rav Savar, so that's what it means. So Rav Savar, Liboisam, he placed it on his heart. And to everyone else, he paskin. Shmuel Savar, Libosam, it was only on himself. In other words, he may have accepted upon himself this chumrah on himself, but not necessarily to anyone else. V'shem Daniel Gazer, is it true there was Daniel that was geyser oil, ba'omer, ba'ali omer, avimi noisa mishmei rab, piton, bread, and here's the key word, ushmanan, and oil, v'yenam v'noisehen, and their daughters, kulan mishmei asur davarhen. They all fall under the category of the Shmona Asar Davar, as Rashi reminds us that in Masechta Shabbos there was a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, who ended up counting 18 things. There's a whole list of those things over there. A lot of it has to do with Tumah the Rabbanan, with your Yodayim, but there's other things included, and at the end it discusses this, and it also talks about Hotzah, the dinim of carrying. That's why it's over there, Masechta Shabbos. Anyway, the point is that it's already something that was established by Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. The Chitem also did a Gazar Vo Kibel. Maybe it was really Gazar later on by Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Now maybe Daniel was Geyser, but no one accepted his Gezerah. Yasa Talmidi the Hillel v'Shammai v'Gazar v'Kibel im Kain Maya Sahadase the Rav. So what is this testimony of Rav? Says Rashi, the Armor did Daniel Gazar love Kivan did Dario Kabul Mine Lav Gzerahi. You're saying, oh, Daniel was Geyser this oil. Well, he may have tried, but he wasn't successful. So you could say anything you want, but it wasn't an enactment if no one accepted it until the times of Talmidei Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So then it sounds really like it was, again, Daniel that not only tried, but maybe was even successful. El Daniel Gazer La Be'ir. He was only Geyser in the city. Because if you're in a city where, you have all your neighbors, all your Ovid Kachavim neighbors, so there's an issue of chasnos. But not anywhere else. Even in a field where, you, as we saw in yesterday's daf, you're just encountering them in the field, but it's not necessarily that you were expecting to see them, or there's going to be something which is a common occurrence, and therefore there shouldn't be an issue of chasnos. But then the Talmidei Beis Shammai Beis Hillel were geyser also there. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi heichi matzi lemishra tekanta the Talmidei Shammai Beis Hillel. Understand? So if in fact we're saying that Shammai and Hillel, which is part of the Yud Ches Davar, so how could they have overruled this gezer? V'dan based in Yochel Avato Divrei based in Chaver Elim Kain Godamin B'Chachma Minyan. But furthermore, Hoi Merabba B'Barchana Rabbi Yochanan B'Choil Yochel Avato based in Divrei based in Chavero. You can actually, based in number 2, is able to remove. Says Rashi, Shegozol Davar Hamutar Ubavad Shehi Godol Mimenu Chutz Mishmoin Asadavar. It says maybe we are lenient sometimes, but never during the by the Shmon Esrei Davar. Shafil Yava Eliyahu. Even if Eliyahu would come and base Dino in Shaiman Loy. So Amra Mishar Shia Matam. What's the reason? Hoyul Pashat Surah B'Rei Yisrael. The reason is because the majority of Klal Yisrael were makabel this particular gzeira. However, Shemen will Pashat Surah B'Rei Yisrael. However, when it came to the Isra of oil, it's not something in which affected the majority of Klal Yisrael, and therefore, because of that, it's different. Diyomer Rabbi Shmuel bar Abba Oim Rabbi Yochanan Yoshu Rabbeinu Badku al Shemen. They were baiting regarding the oil. Shaloi Pashat Isurai Barav Yisrael. That it was not accepted, this particular gezerah by Roy. V'samcha Rabbeinu al Dibri Rabbi Sheva Gamliel al Dibri Rabbi Lezer ben Tzadok Shahay Oimrim Ein Geizim Gezerah al Tzibur Alim Ken Rabbi Tzibur Yichon Lamad Ba. We have a ruling that the only time a gezerah actually sticks is that the majority of people were makabel. So even though some people may have been makabel, it wasn't roiv, and therefore that's the reason why they have the wiggle room to maybe remove it. Mikra, what does it mean in the following pasuk? As we continue with the Lamed Vav Amid Beis, it says in the pasuk in Malachi, Bam Eira Atem Ne'arim V'oisi Atem Koivim Hagoy Kuloi. So it says regarding this curse, and upon you they will rob from me kulo, the majority, or kulo, all of them rather. Now says Rashi, oyisim mekabel melechem gezerah ba'or b'klol v'neser lechem. So e could go kulo in ilo. It has to be like the majority, everyone. Gruba kulo. If not, then not. Goof. Getting back. Oyimer ba'ali oyimer av yimei nois the mishmei derav. Pita nushman amiyena v'nusein kol mishman asa davar hein. So b'nusein maihi. What exactly? It says daughters. What is that referring to? So oyimer av nachman b'yitzch gozro b'nusein nidois mi arusein. Regarding their daughters, that they have the status of being a nida even as in their carriages, even as young children. We consider them to be tamei. Basically, again, it's a way of distancing ourselves from them. The it's actually because it's actually connected to Avodah Zarah. The whole issue of the bread, why we can't eat their bread, is because of their oil. So my ulame de shemen mapas. Why? What's the difference between one and the other? Oh, that we're so scared of the oil that we don't want you to eat bread because of the oil. Well, how is one worse than the other? Naturally, the bread and the oil are linked. We answer that because of oil, because of the wine. And wine we know is a problem of yain nesach. And v'al davar acher mishum davar acher. This is like one of my favorite lines. That we're going to this thing because of that thing, which we have to understand what does that mean. We'll get to that. So when they say deraisehi, so the fact that it says to distance yourself and make them like a nida, it's actually din deraisa, that we don't want to can't marry them. Dersiv lo tischasim bam. So there's an isser of marrying them. Whereas deraisa zayin umois. The isser is only taking one of these daughters who are from the 7 nations. Of a shar of the Chachamim, not anyone from a different nation. And his gezerah was not only against the zayin umos, because the pasuk of Lutisrasen is dafka talking about the zayin umos, and therefore it's only gezerah d'Rabbanan on all the other of the Chachamim of other nations. Rav Shimon ben Yochai, the pasuk says in Sefer Devarim, "Lo yaser es bincha miachar," right? That your son shouldn't go after them. V'yavdu olhim acherim, worshiping idols. V'charaf Hashem b'chem. Hashem will be very upset. So, what does that mean? Ki yaser es bincha miachar. Lo rabbis kol mesiros. Any idol worshiper, any non-Jew will call it. So, my equal meimar. So, el deraisa ishus derech chasnos. The whole Issa Deraisa is marrying anyone, not only from the Zayin Umos, but any nation. The Gezerah was having Znos. Znos nami bebeistinu shel shem gazu, but it was already been gazed in the time of shame. Dechsiv, as the pasuk says, obviously in Sefer Bereshis, Vahi kimishalosh chadashim. After a few months have went by, in which Tamar was recognizably pregnant. V'yugad Yehuda Lamar Zonsa Tamar. So Yehuda, who of course was the one who impregnated Tamar, was told, "Oh, Tamar is pregnant. V'gam hini hara was nunim yemen hotzia v'tisaref. She should be killed." And of course, we learn out from here the tremendous drasha that you have to be silent so as not to be malbim panei chaveroi. It's even better to be thrown into kivshan eish not from tamar. So anyway, it says v'yarmer Yehuda hoitzi of a, and the reason is because since she was supposedly with an akum, and therefore it wasn't der chasnus, but still it was aser der snus. So that's also the Raisa. The Raisa of Israel, an man who's with a Jewish woman, the mashcha basrei, that she will follow him. That's the problem, because typically the woman will go after the man. The woman will move to his city and maybe follow his traditions, and therefore that's the whole problem. Is that the big problem is that she will not just have znus with this man, but the problem is she'll end up also following his ways and being Avodah Zarah. However, Yisrael is not going to follow the Avodah woman's ways. Therefore, there's a gezerah against a man b'derech znus with Avodah Kachavim. Yisrael haba Avodah Kachavim halachim shmesinahi. It's actually halachim shmesina. The Yemar haboyel ramas kanayim poigin boy, as we saw in the Sanhedrin with regard to Pinchas. So Amalei Diraisa before Hesia. When it came to Zimri and Cosby, that was done before Hesia. That was the problem. That's when we say Kanayim Poigin boy. Ukamasa Shahoya. Yasa Inhu Gazra Afil Basina. And it's talking about the Gezerah is even in seclusion. So we don't say Habayel Ramas Kanayim Poigin boy. That's only before Hesia. Basina, we don't say this. But nonetheless, we're still Geyser Yisrael Habal Vizkachabim. So Besina Nami based in Shal Chashmonai Gazru. It was the time of the Chashmonai. The Chiyas of Rabbi Yomi based in Shal Chashmonai Gazru Yisrael Habal V'Kachavim Mechayim Mishum Nashga. Chiyas Rabbi Yomi Mishum Nashgaz. So what are these things? So Rashi says Nashga is an acronym of Nida, which is Durabanan. The Shin is Shivcha. The Gimel is that you were with a Goy or Avodah Kachavim. And the Aleph is because of Eishes Ish. Or maybe we should, instead of saying Eishes Ish, we change it to Zaina. It says Rashi Sheim Kayin Hu, that if he's a Kayin, Yesh Kan Mishum Lab de Zaina. V'im V'loi Lab Mamish El Gzeira. Mishum Zaina Yisrael is Shenivli Asrala. Okay. So anyway, so we have a kasha. We already see it was already the time of the Chashmonai. But Ki Gaz are based in a Chashmonai Bia. So the Chashmonaim are the one that asked the man to have bia besina with an Avodah Kachavim. However, later on there were geyser even yichud when Avodah Kachavim. So yichud now maybe it's in the shul David geyser. The Yom Rabbi Yehuda ba'isa shal geyser al yichud. So Rabbi Hasim yichud b'as Yisrael. But yichud Avodah Kachavim loy. That was the gezerah of David Melech. Was with a Jewish woman, but when there was Chachavim, there was no such a gezerah. But then they made the gezerah also. Yasinu gazer afil a yichud of Chachavim. So yichud abas Yisrael deraisa he. Understand? We mean a gezerah in the time of David Melech. It's a din deraisa. The Rabbi Yochanan Mishim Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuzik remez ol yichud min atayr menayin. Of course, there's the word remez. So how do we say the shnemar? Because the pasuk says also in the Devarim kisi sicha achicha beni mecha when you're seduced into doing Avodah Zarah. So the question of V'chi ben im masis ben aim ben av enomesis, the son of one's daughter. Also, el ben misyachadim imoy. It's trying to tell you why it says ben imecha. Is to tell you that a son is allowed to have yichud with his own mother. He's allowed to be alone with his own mother. But you're not allowed to have yichud with anyone else. So we see it's actually a remez beferish in the Torah. It's not a gzeir d'Rabbanan. So the Gemara says like this. You're right, there is a pasuk. But yichud d'Yeraisa d'Eishes Ish. The isser of yichud mid'Yeraisa is being with a married woman. We also David because we feel a yichud de penuya. We also tell the Sham and Beis Hillel because we feel a yichud de Avodah Kachavim. So that's the distinction. So at the end of the day, you can't marry an Avodah Kachavim. You can't have znus, and you can't have yichud, and also, of course, with Yisrael as well. The question is who is guys or what? Okay, Mayel davar acher, mishum davar acher. Don't do this thing because of this thing. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak goes al tinik of his chachavim, where guys are on a idol worshiper little boy, shiatami beziva. We consider him Tommy Zav. Shalo Yehe Tinik Yisrael Rogel Etzloi B'Mishkav Zachar. Because we don't want to be near him because maybe we'll be accustomed to Mishkav Zachar. Yom Rav Zarah, Sar Godel Hoyeli Eitzel Rav Yossi Eitzel Rav Yochanan, Rav Yochanan Eitzel Rav Yana Eitzel Rav Noson Ben Amram, Rav Nachman Yamram Eitzel Rav Rabbi, Tinik Oibin Kachavim Miyamosim Atami Beziva. So he said, when does the child become Tameh? It says Rashi, it's if he will raw, even if he didn't see Zav or Keri. Vermely Ben Yoimai, even when he's a day old. Actually, he's got to be 9 years old. Rabbi Omer Hanach Divarai, leave my words, Rabbi Chia. And instead you should embrace the words of Rav Chia, who says 9 years old. So 9 years old. Why? As we continue Lamed Zayin Banav, Hoyel, since V'roi Labia. So since once a boy is 9 years old, he technically is fit to physically be able to have bia. Therefore, Matamanama Beziva, says Rashi, the time of the Gzer Ziva Mishom Bia Haboy. The whole issue is because of bia. So there's no, why would you be geyser when he's a day old? So Ravina Hilkach, therefore, it's 3 years old. Doesn't mean obviously we have bia with a little child, but the point is that physically it's possible that bia could be performed, albeit improperly to be done. Because we always compare a boy of 9 years old to a girl who's 3. So ma'adatema hayadid argule v'halo yade l'argule kamash mawan. So Rashi says tina kishroi labia hu arum. So a boy who's fit to have be at 9 l'argule limshach yisol etzle. So it's possible that a person will wish to have tashmish with him. Tinaika says Rashi bas gimel the afagav the bas biehi ein ba ar misa. There's no trickery. The lo yad del argule actually bas tisha. So maybe you shouldn't be geyser until maybe later on. Kamash on. Okay, so we're going to stop here. Let's see a couple questions. Question 6. So it's true. It is a deraisa, but maybe only in the Zayin Umais, but not the Shar Umais. Or, according to the Rashbi, whose geyser also, he says that's a deraisa also in Shar Umais, he says the Gezer is Mishum Yichud Yisrael, Yima Banas Kachal. That's what the Gezer is. Yichud. Question... TA18. Be'el fanim asim min ataru laval hanachos. Be'el fanim. Umad yermo rabbis kol hamasirin. So, either o derchasnus or farhesia. Okay, that's what we're looking for. TB 19. Mag gazru basin shel chashmonai. Mag gazru David. Magos the Tamni Beisham Beis Hillel. Okay, that's not such an easy question. You have to really know the stuff. So the answer is on Lamed Vav Lamed Beis, which is pretty similar. So it's basically on the bottom over here. This is TB 19. So Yichud Deraisa Eishasish. So David was geyser on Yichud de Penuya. Shamin Hill gozer on Yichud of Eskachavim, and the Chashmonoim were geyser on Znus. Let's see what I wrote. Isser Yichud al Akum, Yichud al Bas Yisrael, Yichud afil al Pnui. This is not correct. Okay, so let's get this down. So. The Yichud derives Eishes Yisrael. The also David goes afil a Yichud Penuya. I wrote that. Yichud Pinuya, that is David. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Yichud Avodah Kochavim. That was Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the Chashmonai, now because Yichud al Bas Yisrael is actually Deraisa, okay? Yichud Deraisa, Deishis Ish, Yasa David goes there for Yichud Panuya. Okay, so when it came to the Chashmonaim, he goes through basically Bia, right? Bia Ba'akum. Besina also, right? Because Haboya Ram is kind of, so the Raisa is Bafar Hesed. V'asa Inhu goes through a full Besina. So based in Shal Chashmonai goes through, right? So you said, yeah, but when there were guys there, it was on Bia, but not on Yichud, right? So Bia Ba'akum is the Chashmonai. Chashmonai. Adkan.